Baby Island, Chapter 7. Mary mixes the twins. The next day they put the little monkey out where his mother could find him if she chose, but she never returned for him. The screams from the teepee had frightened the monkeys so that they never wished to return. But it seemed to make very little difference to the baby monkey. He had found a new family which he quite liked as well as the old. The girls fed him and petted him. Although Mary had been the one to rescue him, he soon became Jean's particular baby. Some spirit of mischief and adventure in the two linked them together almost from the start. Jean named him Prince Charlie, after the ranch her father managed in Australia, and it was not long before he knew his name and came when he was called. Unfortunately, he often got himself into trouble with Mary because he liked to steal Jonah's bottle, pull Anne Elizabeth's hair, or get the twins into mischief. But he was so gay and amusing that they could forgive him a great deal. The girls soon settled down to a regular routine of housekeeping. As the days passed, Mary checked them off on her calendar so that they would know where they were in point of time, and Jean had regularly mailed her letter to Aunt Emma, sealing it in an empty can and tossing it out to sea. Sometimes the waves brought it back. Sometimes on a calm day when the tide was going out, it danced away in the sunshine until it was lost to sight. Mary always sighed and shook her head when Jean performed this rite, but she said nothing, as Jean seemed to derive some comfort from it. One of the first things they had to do was build a pen for the babies so that they could play safely without straying away. In the shade of a couple of palm trees, they built a small stockade by driving sharpened sticks close together into the ground. It was a hard task, but well worth the trouble, for the twins and Anne Elizabeth were content to play there for hours without danger. Another great achievement was building of the pram, perambulator for long, pram for short. This, like the teepee, was an idea which they had got from Cousin Alec's fund of Indian lore. They made a litter of boughs, tied it together with long, sinewy vines that abounded everywhere, and some pieces of their precious rope. More vines and rope made a sort of double harness which the girls put around their shoulders. When they wanted to go anywhere, they loaded the litter with babies and blankets and dragged the whole thing along behind them. True, it was very slow, and once they lost Blue off altogether and had to go back nearly a quarter of a mile for him. But on the whole, the pram was very successful. They found the abundance of vines useful for many purposes. Jean discovered a natural swing hanging between two trees in the edge of the jungle. "Don't you let either of them fall, Jean," warned Mary. "I've got an awful responsibility to Mrs. Snodgrass, and I don't know whether she would approve of swinging or not." "Oh, they love it, Mary, and I'll be awfully careful of them, you know," said Jean a little wistfully. "I'm really beginning to feel settled now that we have a swing." They soon discovered that, when the tide was out, the little sun-warmed pools among the rocks made splendid bathtubs for the baby. One morning, while baths were in progress, Jean suddenly began to rub her eyes. "Mary, do you see what I see?" "I see 4 darling babies, if that's what you mean," said Mary happily. "No, look down at the sandy stretch. Look, there are funny little squirts of water coming up." "Sure enough," said Mary. "But Mary, you're so calm about it. I think it's mighty queer to see water squirting right out of the sand. Come on, Pink, you're dry enough now. Let's investigate." Taking Elisha by the hand and Prince Charlie on her shoulder, she went down to the beach to look at the queer little holes from which the water came. She picked up a piece of driftwood and began to dig where the tiny spout of water had been. Presently, she was digging faster and faster. "Ah, Mary, there's something down here," she called. "It's going to go down as fast as I can dig. Oh, wait a minute, I'm getting it." Suddenly she gave a triumphant shout. "Mary, look what the cat brought in!" And Jean held aloft a oval shell. "Why, Jeanie, it's a clam!" cried Mary. "Aren't you a smart girl? Folks stew them or steam them or something, and eat them for dinner." Jean was through with the baby washing for the rest of the morning. She ran for the pail with her clam safely inside it. She began to dig wherever she saw a spout of water. The pink twin waddled joyfully behind her, digging very busily too, but never catching any clams. "Clams, clams," sang Jane. "We haven't got pork chop, we haven't got hams, we haven't got mutton or beef or lambs, but we've got clams and clams and clams and clams." The bottom of her pail was well covered when Pink Twin suddenly uttered a fearful howl. Murder, said Jean. What is it, my pet? His voice rose in a series of piercing shrieks. Jean left her pail and ran to his assistance. He sat in a puddle and pointed dramatically at his toe. Jean's anxious eyes saw a small green crab hanging to his toe for dear life. Oh, it's a crab, she cried. Poor baby. Jean will take it off. Go away, naughty crab. She unloosed the sharp pincers, and the queer little creature scuttled sideways under a rock. Pink stopped crying. Then he pointed to the spot where it disappeared and said, Quab. Jean was delighted. She picked him up, and ran to Mary. Pink has learned a new word. Think of it, Mary. He can say crab. Say crab, Pink. But Pink only looked at them. He put his finger before his face. He smiled, but he wouldn't say a word. That noon they had clams for dinner. Oh, how good they tasted. Jean preferred to forage for food, and Mary to tend the babies and keep house. So it very often happened that Jean went off alone, returning laden with bananas or coconuts or breadfruits, which they didn't know by name but had found delicious when cooked. Sometimes she dug for clams or gathered mussels. One day she managed to capture a big green crab. I'm sure I've heard of people eating cracked crab. I'll just take him home and crack him up to surprise Mary, she said to herself. But I better not let Elisha see him, she added. He'd be scareder pink than he already is. So she put the crab inside the pail with a big palm leaf over the top to keep him in. As she came near the teepee, Mary ran to meet her. Oh, Jean, something terrible has happened. Is Prince Charlie lost? Oh, no, worse, Jean. Has Jonah swallowed a coconut? Oh, no, worse. Well, for pity's sake, tell me, Mary. I'm trying to, Jean, but you ask questions so fast I can't. Listen, I'll never forgive myself. I've mixed up the twins. Mary, not really. Oh, I don't know how I could have let such a thing happen, wailed Mary. You see, Pink was undressed. I was washing his clothes, and then I went out to see if they were dry and left the twins together. And when I came back, Blue had managed to wriggle out of his nightie, too, and there they were, exactly alike, and no way of telling which is which. Shades of Mrs. Snodgrass, ejaculated Jean solemnly. Come to Jean, Blue. Both twins looked up and waved their fat hands. Pink, come here, begged Jean. Both babies staggered onto their fat legs and toddled over. Elisha! Elijah! Both of them answered to either name. It seemed hopeless. Well, remarked Jean, I never did think it made much of a difference anyway. Mary, so brave in the face of danger, suddenly burst into tears. You know how I feel about that, Jean, she sobbed. Each baby has a right to his own name and his own color. I can't help thinking how their mother would feel. Aunt Elizabeth was creeping about the tent on a tour of inspection. She came to the pail Jean had left in the doorway. She tipped it over gently and took off the palm leaf. Pity, she said, pity. But no one heard her, for Mary and Jean were too busy trying to identify the twins to heed another baby's prattle. Oh, said Aunt Elizabeth as the fat green crab walked out of the pail and into the tent. Oh. Still, nobody paid her any attention. Mary and Jean were just giving up in despair when the eyes of one of the twins went wide with terror. Quab! He shrieked. Mary and Jean followed his gaze, and there was the fat green crab in the middle of the floor. It's Pink, cried Jean, catching him up to hug him. Dry your tears, Mary. He solved his own riddle. And so he had. So the weeks passed, and as nothing disagreeable happened to them, they began to feel quite at home in the teepee. Now that they had found fresh water and plentiful supplies of fruit and shellfish, Mary had only one great worry. How long would the canned milk supply hold out? It was worrying her one Saturday morning. She had just been looking at the calendar and thinking that since tomorrow was Sunday, they might treat themselves to a can of beef, when she noticed how few cans of milk were left. She heaved a great sigh. It was often difficult being a mother to so many. Even Jean needed watching over. Her 23rd Psalm was getting very rusty from being in a heathen country for so long, and Mary resolved that she should say it tomorrow at Sunday worship. She had Sunday on her mind and was particularly surprised when Jean burst in, crying, Friday! Friday! No, dear, it's Saturday, corrected Mary absently. Then something in Jean's tone made her pause. Jean was panting so that she could scarcely speak. Why, what's the matter? Asked Mary. I told you it's Friday. I saw his tracks. You saw whose tracks? Cried Mary. Oh, Mary, like Robinson Crusoe. Don't you remember? There were tracks in the sand. I saw them. Jean, said Mary, you're all excited. I bet you just saw your own tracks and got scared. There's certainly no Man Friday around here. Oh, isn't there? Cried Jean bitterly. I guess I'm smart enough to know my own tracks from those of a big savage. Did you see anything besides tracks? Asked Mary. Goodness, Mary, how much do you expect for a nickel? I tell you I saw tracks as big as, oh, enormous. And one toe was missing. Mary was much troubled. Suppose there really were other people on the island. Would they be unfriendly? Where did you see the tracks, Jean? Way down the beach, farther than we've ever went before. I ran all the way home. Come, I'll show you. Wide-eyed and pale, Mary followed Jean up the beach. There, panted Jean at last. Clear and fresh in the moist sand near the water's edge were tracks of naked feet. No one could possibly imagine them to be Jean's. Farther up, they were lost in the loose sand and rocks. They were very large, and the imprint of the middle toe was missing from the left foot.